November 1st, 1904. I talked to Uncle Schmully about Miriam tonight. He told me something interesting. He said he is pretty sure that Papa has visited Miriam, and has maybe even given her some money now that he is making more. He says Papa won't say anything because he doesn't want to upset Mama. So I say, what a crazy family I live in. Nobody says what they are really thinking or doing. We sneak around. He says this is how families are. Half the time they argue with one another, and the other half of the time they tiptoe around trying to protect each other for fear of hurting them. It all seems very complicated to me. November 2nd, 1904. I got a B on my Millard Fillmore report. The teacher wrote on my paper, "Excellent spelling, nice sentences, well organized but too short." I felt like writing back. Millard Fillmore, in spite of living 74 years, had a very boring life and could have done it in half the time. But I did not write this. November 7th, 1904. Well, the Democratic precinct captain has just paid us a visit. He is so fat that the stairs creak as he climbs them, and he wheezes so much that we heard him long before he got here. His trip is in vain, of course, because Papa can't vote, but he says if he could, he would only vote for Mr. Roosevelt. Papa and Tova argue endlessly about this, because Tova and all her Union friends are Democrats. So round and round Papa and Tova go. It's rather pointless, as neither one can vote. But the way she goes on, you'd think she could. Mama is horrified that a young lady would argue politics. But that, of course, wouldn't stop Tova. In Russia you wouldn't have done this, Mama says. In Russia there was no election to argue about, Tova replies. It is unbecoming. How will we ever find you a husband with a mouth like that? Mama wrings her hands, then pulls on her wig a bit. Does this shut up my big sister? Never. The only reason Papa would vote for Teddy Roosevelt is because Uncle Moishy made his Rough Rider suit for the Spanish-American War. Is this a democracy where a man, if he is rich enough, can have his uniform custom tailored at Brooks Brothers? Tova asks. Then, of course, Papa chimes in. That is not why I would vote for Mr. Roosevelt. I vote for the man, not the suit. He raises his finger as he says this, and pauses, because it does sound so good, it maybe should be a headline. Then he continues, But let me tell you, daughter, your Uncle Moshi made those canvas leggings look like cavalry twill, and his skill in fashioning a cartridge pocket is to be matched by no one. I say no one on the Lower East Side. I would definitely vote for Teddy Roosevelt if I could. But we will all go tomorrow with Uncle Moishy when he votes. Uncle Moishy is a citizen. And I don't care if it is boiling hot. I am going to wear the new winter coat that Mama fitted for me from one of the samples for Yitzy's father. It has velvet piping around the collar and both pockets. We Feldman shall all walk proudly down Orchard Street to the polls, even though only Uncle Moishy can vote. Oh, how I wish the Tsar could see us now. November 13th, 1904. Guess what? I have a new play for which I shall be assistant prop girl. It is rumored that Jacob Adler is to be the star. I am so excited. Just imagine, I might be handing a prop to Jacob Adler. P.S. Teddy Roosevelt won the election, but I am more excited about Jacob Adler. November 14th, 1904. Uncle Schmully confessed to me that he is in love with Blue's mother, and they want to get married, but first Mrs. Wolfe must get a divorce. She will need a Jewish one from the rabbi, and a United States one from the government. So I told Uncle Schmully about how Mama and I saw Mr. Wolfe left town. Uncle Schmully's eyes nearly popped out of his head when I told him this. Then I showed him the letter I wrote to the Jewish Daily Forward, and the answer. Uncle Schmully said that it was really important that I told him this, that now it might be quicker getting the divorce. Between Mamie taking me around to look for halls for her coming wedding, and telling Uncle Schmully important things for his future marriage, I guess I should go into the wedding advising business. November 17th, 1904. Hanukkah is just over 2 weeks away, and I am not even excited. I wonder if Miriam will celebrate Hanukkah. November 23rd, 1904. I write for the first time in many weeks in Yiddish. No language except my own could hold these feelings, and yet I am numb. My fingers move mechanically with the pen across this page as I tell this terrible story. It is the worst tragedy I have ever known. Mamie is dead. She died in a terrible fire at the Diamond Shirtwaist Factory where she worked. Yesterday, when school let out, Blue and I walked up Ludlow Street toward Hester Street, and it seemed unusually quiet and empty. For the first few minutes, we were just perplexed, And then we saw tight little knots of people standing together on street corners, talking in low voices. But suddenly Blue and I both noticed that there were hardly any carts or wagons. Usually there is a tangle of carts and wagons clogging the streets near and around Hester Street. "What's happening?" Blue asked someone. "A terrible fire near Washington Square," they said. "The Diamond Shirtwaist Factory." I screamed, for I knew that was where Mamie worked. I grabbed Blue's hand and we tore through the streets. It had been very cold, and there was ice, and sometimes we slipped. Soon we saw huge black clouds of smoke and ashes and cinders swirling through the air. The factory was in a big loft building that took up an entire block. I gasped as I saw flames leaping out of the windows and from the roof. We pushed our way into the crowd and looked up. "Mamie," I whispered her name. Blue and I held on to each other and looked up in horror. "The doors are locked," someone said. "What?" I turned and asked. "Why?" "They don't like workers leaving early," another person said. "So now they jump from the windows." And sure enough, just at that moment, I saw a figure hurl through the air, and then I saw a couple standing in a window fringed with flames. I watched them wrap themselves in each other's arms and fall. "We got nets!" a cry came out. I felt the crowd surge backward. "They need room! The firemen need room to spread the nets!" a voice boomed through a megaphone. The bodies continued to fall from the windows. Workers leaped and dived and jumped out of the flames, but most were killed hitting the ground. The fire burned for more than an hour before the firemen could break into the building. Blue and I stayed for hours. I kept praying that Mamie would get out and that we would see her, but with each minute my hopes dwindled. Finally, we each went home, and I could only hope that maybe she had gotten out and we had missed her. I told Mama what had happened. She put her hand over her mouth and her eyes grew wide. "Tova," she whispered. "No, Mama, it was not Tova's factory. Not anywhere near it." None of us could go to sleep. Papa came back early from the conservatory, for he had heard, and Uncle Schmully came back from work early too. We all sat around. We ate no dinner. Finally, close to midnight, Tova came in. It was as if her face had caved in. Very quietly, she said, 100 workers dead." "Mamie?" I asked. "Is Mamie dead?" I could barely get out the word. Tova's head seemed to sink into her shoulders. There was this terrible shudder that went like a current through her whole body. And I knew that Mamie, my dear, beautiful Mamie, with the hair like a sunset, was dead. I don't want to write anymore. It might be a long time before I write again. January 16th, 1905. Nearly 2 months since I have written, since the terrible fire. Mamie is gone nearly 2 months. It is still unbelievable to me. I try not to think about it, but it is hard. I see Boris all the time at the theater, but he is like a shadow of a man, a ghost. His eyes are dim and hollow. Tova now works day and night with her union to try and make laws that will prevent a terrible thing like this from ever happening again. But still, Mamie is gone. I know what dead is now. Dead is not Miriam up on 110th Street, married to a Catholic man. Dead is Mamie, smashed on the pavement, her blood soaking into the ice, the snowy gutters. That is dead. I still work in the theater 3 nights a week. It is a rest to enter this magical world, but even this takes effort now. January 20th, 1905. There has begun in Russia, a little over a week ago, a big revolution. It started on a Sunday in front of the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg, where the Tsar ordered demonstrators in a peaceful march to be gunned down. They now call this day Bloody Sunday. Uncle Schmully took me to his club. It is called the Lermontov Club, and there are a lot of his old friends from the Bund in it. They jabber about revolution. They are all very excited. I myself thought it was boring. I know revolution is very exciting, but sitting around talking about it isn't. They all smoke too much. I could hardly breathe. January 22nd, 1905. I have felt so empty since Mamie died. I walk around. I see, I think. I do my schoolwork. I talk with Blue and Yitzy, but nothing really touches me, makes me excited or happy. I mean, you know I work in the theater and my dream of handing Jacob Adler a prop. Well, that dream has come true. A year ago, I would die to do this. It means so little to me now. Will I ever be normal again? I would talk to Uncle Schmully about it, but I don't know what to say. And what could he do? He is so in love. Why should I spoil his happiness with my problems? I feel so alone, so terribly alone. February 1st, 1905. Something pretty good has happened. Yes, a dream come true. I am going to have a part in a play. I am excited. I really am. But I am still not feeling the way I would have a year ago, and that saddens me. But I think I must act, really act now, if I am to do a good job. I must pretend that this is the most wonderful thing that ever happened, even though now I would trade the part in a minute if Mamie could come back. The play is Shalamuth, the very first Yiddish play that I ever saw, and I get to be one of Shulamuth's children. The one who gets eaten by a lion. That is the best one to play, because if I was the other one, the child who gets thrown down the well, I'd just disappear in a flash. But I have more time on stage. The lion wrestles me to the ground, and then clamps me in his jaws and drags me off the stage. There is plenty of acting time. So I am going to work very hard and practice expressions of horror and pain that one might have if being eaten alive by a lion. February 10th, 1905. It is not easy being eaten by a lion. I have bruises all over me. 2 men play the lion. One is the front and one is the back. They are under a furry cover with a head, a huge head, with papier-mâché teeth as long as bananas. My head fits inside the lion's head. The costume designer made it that way on purpose because it is so dramatic to see my head being eaten that way. But I face the audience so they can see my looks of horror. I practice my horror looks every night in the mirror. The play opens 2 weeks before Purim, so we have almost a month to rehearse. February 15th, 1905. Blue came and watched me in rehearsal after school, and she said Jacob Adler was backstage and he was watching me too. And he said to the stage manager, "That little girl is good. Look, even here in this scene when she is quiet, you see her concern for her mother. That's good acting." Oh my goodness, I cannot believe he really said that. I have to think hard about what I was doing in that scene. February 19th, 1905. Guess what? Mama had her baby, a boy. We are all so happy. He came a little early, but he is a dear little fellow, rather red and wrinkly and very tiny. We are calling him Yassel. In English, Yassel is Joseph, but Mama says we shall not call him Joey. I am much more excited than I thought I would be. Blue's mother came with a midwife to help deliver the baby. It was a quick delivery. Mama did so well. She is just beaming all the time now. She keeps saying, "A little boy." She talks to him and says, "You will be a Gaon, a gifted scholar of the Talmud." I don't spoil her thoughts, but I don't think boys growing up around Orchard Street want to be Gaons anymore. There are too many other things to want to be in America. Mandy told me that he had wanted to be a Talmudic scholar before he came to America. In fact, he had never read any other books but the Talmud, but then he began reading. First he was, in his own words, gulping down Charles Dickens and many English writers. Then he discovered higher mathematics and chemistry. These held mysteries and puzzles that were as intriguing as those of the Talmud. So now Mandy goes in the evening to City College and studies chemistry and one day might be a doctor. I wouldn't mind having a little brother who is a doctor. February 26th, 1905. Tonight I come home from rehearsal, and I simply cannot believe this. Our little Yassel is gone. He died 3 hours ago. It being Sunday, I was at rehearsal all day. When I left, Mama thought he felt a little feverish. By afternoon it had gotten worse. Papa ran for a doctor. But by the time the doctor got here, it was too late, and little Yassel had turned blue. The doctor said that because he came early, his lungs were probably not strong enough. So when he caught a cold, it was just as if the little lungs filled up with water and he drowned. Mama sits very still. She cries, but no sound comes out. Papa just holds her hand. I wish they had not told me what the doctor said about little Yassel drowning. I hate that picture. After Mamie died, I kept picturing her face smashed on the icy pavement. Death can be over in a matter of seconds for the victim, but for the living, it is like one long forever streaming with images. February 27th, 1905. I wonder if Miriam knows about Mama. I wonder if she ever even knew Mama was expecting. I must begin to think about doing something with Miriam. This cannot go on forever. But what should I do? March 4th, 1905. It is really awful in our house. Mama is in another world. She does not sew. She hardly eats. Now I am worried that Uncle Schmully might want to leave. I mean, it is such a sad place where we live. If Uncle Schmully goes, I shall just be lost. Papa is so busy with Mama, and Tova with the union. Uncle Schmully is the only one who knows I am alive. He says he will come to my opening performance, less than a week away. I know Mama is not well enough, and Papa will stay with Mama, and Tova cannot come because she has a meeting, but she promises to come the second night. As much as I love Uncle Schmully, I would like some of my very own family there. March 5th, 1905. 3 days to go before my opening. I am concentrating so hard on everything I must remember on stage. I know all my lines perfectly. I do not have that many, but I keep thinking, what if my mind goes blank and I open my mouth and nothing comes out? March 6th, 1905. 2 days to go before my opening. I wonder if Boris will come by. He is working in another theater. March 7th, 1905. 1 day before my opening. I am so nervous. This is the first real step in my career. What if it ends suddenly? Things happen. One can never tell. Look at little Yassel. Look at Mamie. Her life over before she could even get the hall for her wedding. I should not talk this way because I am not worried about dying. Just making a mistake and ending my career before it begins. That is not so bad as dying, I guess. Oh, I want so much to do well. I want to pray to God. Please, God, no more surprises. Just let me do well. March 9th, 1905, after midnight. I must again write in Yiddish, for my heart is too full. Full not with pain, but finally joy. Oh, yes, the performance went well. I did not forget any of my lines. But at the end of the first act, when I was more relaxed and could look out from the wings into the audience, who should I see sitting in the 5th row to the right but Miriam and Sean? They came to see me. Uncle Schmully was 2 rows ahead, so I do not even know if he saw them at first. I started to weep. Lenny Fine, who plays Shulamith, comes up to me and says, she talks English in this funny Yiddish accent, New York style, "What's you crying about? You ain't been out yet by the lion." I try to explain, but just blubber. Then Boris sees me. He comes over. I take one look and understand that he knows everything, that he is the one who brought them here. And he says simply, that they should miss this night of yours? Never! They should see the first glow of what might be a star in the heavens of Yiddish theater. "I'm no star, Boris," I blubber some more. "It all begins with a twinkle," he says, and pinches my cheek. "Now go out there and act." And that is exactly what I do. I remember what Jacob Adler said about how even when I was still, he could sense the pain I felt for my mother. And I indeed thought of my poor mother grieving for her little Yassel, her hope for a Gaon. And then when the lion takes me in his mouth, I think of the blood in the snowy gutters and the ice melting red. At the end of the play, I take my bow, and Miriam and Sean are standing up and yelling and clapping and cheering. I cannot remember what happened next, exactly, except Miriam and I were backstage hugging, and Sean was hugging Uncle Schmully, and then suddenly Uncle Schmully says, "Miriam, Sean, you must come back to Orchard Street with us. We must stop all this nonsense. Life is too short." So through the sleeting night, we all go back. And we know Uncle Schmully is right. We just know it. So we almost run. We are running up the stairs of number 14 Orchard. We are running down the hall. "Mama," Miriam shouts as she bursts through the door with Sean right behind her. "Mama, I am alive! You cannot make me dead! Mama, I am alive and I love you!" And Mama touches her hand to her head to adjust her wig, but then she remembers she is only wearing a scarf, and her hand just stays in midair. And she makes the shape of Miriam's name on her lips. And then she whispers, "Mirmela," for that is her baby name for Miriam, as mine is Zipporah, and Tova's is Tovala. And she says it again, and suddenly it is as if Mama has flown across the room. And she wraps her arms around Miriam, and she hugs her so tight. And then she breaks away, and she looks at Sean, and she says at Tante Fruma, "Love and hunger do not live together. My Miriam looks healthy and beautiful." She takes Sean's hand and presses it to her lips. Then everyone cries and cries and cries. 1 minute later, Tova comes in, and for the first time in her entire existence, Tova is absolutely speechless. It is actually Tante Fruma who has the last word, through my mother's mouth. Mama says, "You get as old as a cow, but you still go on learning." So I am calmer now, and can write once more in English. I have only one page left in this diary that Mama bought for me back in Zarica. As I write, it feels as if I am at the end of what has been a very long night, or maybe it is the beginning of a new day. I look back in this diary I have kept now for over a year, 18 months to be exact, and I think this is a very strange sort of story. It begins with an ending, the ending of our life in Russia, and it ends with a beginning. And throughout the entire diary, there are beginnings and endings that seem to braid together like a plait of very long hair. Sometimes one cannot tell the beginning from the ending, and this is not necessarily bad, for if one really knew, one might not have the courage to go on. I want to go on. I think I shall buy a new diary tomorrow, and begin to fill it up with my story. I am sure there will be many more beginnings and endings, and I hope that I shall never be quite sure which is which.